Tales from the Hood by Michael Buckley. For my friend Joe Deasy. Sabrina had never felt as confident as she did that moment. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't worried about monsters, villains, or lunatics. She didn't fear surprise attacks or betrayal by people she trusted. In fact, she was eager for a confrontation. Let one of the Scholar Hands thugs try something, and she would crush them into dust. Her body was strong. Her blood was hungry. She was a wrecking machine. She wanted to tell her sister how she felt. If only she could make Daphne understand that what was happening was a good thing. But the words were hard to find. Her thoughts were cloudy and complicated. It didn't help that everyone was shouting, and the room was filled with strong winds. Sabrina turned to Daphne. The little girl was undergoing her own transformation. A swirling black fog circled her body, blocking out most of her face. All Sabrina could see were her eyes, like two brilliant suns illuminating dark corners and obliterating shadows. "Sabrina, you have to stop this," Granny Rhoda cried. Sabrina was confused. What did her grandmother mean? She wasn't doing anything wrong. "You have to fight this," Daphne said from behind the black fog. "I know you're still in there. Don't let him control you." "Why are you talking to me like this?" Sabrina asked. When no one replied, she realized her words were only in her head. "Fight him, child," a voice said from below. Sabrina glanced down. Mr. Canis lay at her feet, old and withered, his body trapped in the clutches of a huge fur-covered paw. It was surprising it was squeezing the life from the old man's chest. She cried out, hoping someone would help her pull her friend from the monster's terrible grip, but her pleas ceased when she realized the claws that were killing Mr. Canis were her own. Chapter 1. 5 days earlier. Sabrina Grimm awoke with a crazy dream fresh in her mind. In it, she was walking along a stone path when she realized she was naked. She screamed and rushed to some bushes to hide herself, wondering how she could have left the house without remembering to get dressed. A moment later, the worst possible person came along, Puck. Since she had little alternative, she begged him to bring her clothes. He flew off and quickly returned with a pair of jeans, a shirt, and sneakers, which she left by the bushes so she could dress in private. Then, surprisingly, he walked away without a single smart-aleck comment. Relieved, she put the clothing on and continued on her way, only to find people pointing at her and staring. She looked down and found she was naked again. Puck appeared once more. He told her that clothes couldn't hide who she really was. That's when she woke up, angry and embarrassed. Even in her dreams, Puck was a pain. She lay in bed, enjoying the cool breeze drifting through her bedroom window. The model airplanes hanging from the ceiling swayed back and forth. She watched them for a while, imagining her father building them when he was at her age. He had put a lot of effort into the models. They were painted, glued, and assembled perfectly. Her father was meticulous. Her little sister, Daphne, lay asleep beside her, breathing softly into her pillow. Sabrina glanced over at the alarm clock that sat on the night table next to her bed. 3 a.m. It was a good time, she thought. There were no emergencies to deal with, no impending chaos, no responsibilities, and best of all, no prying eyes. She climbed out of bed, rushed to the desk sitting in the corner of the room, and opened a drawer. Tucked in the back was a little black bag. She snatched it up and tiptoed into the hallway. Once she was in the bathroom, she flipped on the light and closed the door. It was nice for once to have the bathroom to herself. There were a lot of people living in the big old house in addition to Sabrina and Daphne. Uncle Jake, Granny Rhoda, Puck, and of course, Elvis, the family dog who often used the toilet as a drinking fountain. And they all shared one tiny bathroom. The line was long and privacy was in short supply. Sabrina unzipped the little black bag, revealing a personal treasure trove of makeup, tubes of lipstick and lip gloss, eyeshadow, mascara, blush, and foundation, as well as a variety of barrettes she had purchased with her allowance at a local drugstore. She dug her hands into the bag and went to work. At first, she tried to apply the foundation, but it made her look like a ghost. Then she accidentally put on too much blush, giving her a look of embarrassment. Perpetual embarrassment. The mascara was thick and gloppy, and combined with the eyeliner, it made her look like an angry raccoon. The lipstick was fire engine red. When she was finished, she studied herself in the mirror and nearly cried. She looked like the Joker from a stack of playing cards. She was hideous and was hopeless. She would never learn to use the stuff. Frustrated, she washed it all off. It was in times like this when Sabrina especially missed her mother. Lately, Sabrina's appearance had become more and more important to her. Though she didn't fully understand the changes she was going through, she knew they had something to do with growing up. It seemed like yesterday when she couldn't have cared less about what she looked like, but now she spent hours contemplating hairstyles. She gave serious consideration to whether her shoes matched her tops. It seemed as if all she could think about was how others might see her, and she hated herself for it. She had always detested girly girls with their little dresses and hair ribbons. They were so stupid and superficial. Unfortunately, she could feel herself becoming one of those girls. Each time she applied her lip gloss, she imagined another fleet of brain cells dying a horrible death. Luckily, no one in her family had noticed her preoccupation with vanity, most importantly, Puck. If he discovered she was visiting the bathroom in the middle of the night to primp and study her flaws, he would make fun of her until she was old and gray. Abandoning her beauty regimen for the night, she washed her face and was about to shut off the light and go back to bed when she heard something bubbling in the toilet. The lid was down and she couldn't see what was causing the noise, but she had her suspicions. Before Puck moved in with the family, he had lived in the woods for a decade, so modern conveniences mesmerized him, none more so than the toilet. He loved to flush it over and over and watch the water swirl down the hole and disappear. For months, he was convinced that toilets were some kind of magic, until Uncle Jake explained how indoor plumbing worked. Unfortunately, this knowledge only increased Puck's interest, and it wasn't long before he was conducting what he called scientific research to discover what could be flushed down the tubes. It started out with a little loose change, but the items quickly grew in size. Marbles, wristwatches, doorknobs, balls of yarn, even scoops of butter pecan ice cream swirled and disappeared. Granny finally put an end to it all when she caught Puck trying to flush a beaver he had trapped by the river. Ever since, the toilet had been coughing up Puck's experiments. Last week, Sabrina found one of her mittens inside. Now apparently something else was making its way to the surface. She bent down and lifted the lid, hoping it was the missing television remote control, which had vanished months ago. But it wasn't remote control. Instead, it was something so shocking she would have nightmares about it the rest of her life, and an unnatural fear of toilets in general. Who would expect to lift the toilet lid and find a little man sitting inside? "Who goes there?" he said in a squeaky voice. He was no more than a foot tall and wore a tiny green suit, a green bowler hat, and shiny black shoes with bright brass buckles. His long red beard dipped into the toilet water. Sabrina shrieked and slammed the toilet lid down the creature's head. The little man groaned and shouted a few angry curses, but Sabrina didn't stick around to hear them. She was already running down the hallway, screaming for her grandmother. Grandmother stumbled out of her room. She was wearing an ankle-length nightgown and a sleeping cap that hid her gray hair. She looked the picture of the perfect grandmother, except, of course, for the sharpened battle axe she held in her hand. "Liebling?" her grandmother cried in a light German accent. Liebling was the German word for sweetheart. "What is going on?" "There's a person in the toilet," Sabrina said. "A what?" Before she could answer, Uncle Jake came out of a room at the end of the hall. He was fully dressed in jeans, leather boots, and a long overcoat with hundreds of little pockets sewn into it. He looked exhausted and died in need of a shave. "What's all the hubbub about?" "Sabrina says she saw something in the toilet," Granny Rhoda explained. "I swear I flushed," Uncle Jake said as he threw up his hands. "Not there! A person!" Sabrina shouted. "He spoke to me." "Mom, you really got to cut back on all the spicy food you've been feeding the girls," Uncle Jake said. "It's giving them bad dreams." "It wasn't a dream," Sabrina cried. Daphne entered the hallway, dragging her blanket behind her. She rubbed the sleep from her eyes with her free hand and looked around grumpily. "Can't a person get some shut-eye around here?" "Sabrina had a bad dream," Granny Rhoda explained. "I did not." "She said she saw something in the toilet," Uncle Jake said. "I swear I flushed," Daphne said. "Ugh, I'll show you," Sabrina said as she pulled her grandmother into the bathroom. She pointed at the toilet and took a step back. "It's in there." Granny saw her battered eggs on the floor and smiled. "Honestly, Sabrina, I think you're a little old to be scared of the boogeyman." The old woman lifted the toilet lid. There was a little man rubbing a red knot on the top of his head and glaring at the crowd. "What's the big idea?" he growled. Startled, Granny slammed the lid down just as Sabrina had done. Sabrina and Daphne and even Uncle Jake cried out in fright and backed out of the bathroom. "Now do you believe me?" Sabrina said. "Oh my!" Granny cried. "I'll never doubt you again." "What should we do, Mom?" Uncle Jake asked the old woman. "Elvis!" Granny Rhoda shouted. Seconds later, an enormous blur of brown fur barreled up the stairs, knocking a few pictures off the wall as it stampeded into the bathroom and came to a screeching halt. Only then could Sabrina see him properly. Elvis, the family's 200-pound Great Dane. He balked at the toilet fiercely, snarling and snapping the lid. "Get him, boy!" Daphne ordered. "You better surrender!" Uncle Jake shouted at the toilet. "Our dog's very hungry." Just then, another door opened down the hall and a shaggy-haired boy in cloud-covered pajamas stepped into the hallway. He scratched his armpit and let out a tremendous belch. "What's all the racket out here?" "There's something horrible in the toilet!" Daphne shouted. "Yeah, I think I forgot to flush," Puck said. "Not that, a little man," Granny Rhoda said. "Oh," Puck said. "That's just Seamus." "And who is Seamus?" Sabrina demanded. "He's part of your new security detail. Now that Mr. Canis is in jail, the house needs looking after, and to be honest, I'm too busy to do it myself. So I hired you all a team of bodyguards." "Why is he in the toilet?" Uncle Jake pressed. "Well, duh, he's guarding it, of course." "Whatever for?" Granny asked. "The toilet is a vulnerable entrance into this house," Puck explained. "Anything could crawl up the pipes and take a bite out of your—" "We get the idea," Granny Rhoda interrupted. "What are we going to do when we need to use it?" "Seamus takes regular breaks and his lunch every day at noon." "This is ridiculous," Sabrina said. "We don't need bodyguards, and we don't need you to put some freak in the toilet." Puck frowned. "You should really watch who you're calling a freak. He's a leprechaun." Seamus lifted the lid and crawled out of the toilet. He now had 2 purple lumps on his head and an angry look in his eyes. "I didn't sign on for this abuse, Puck. I quit." "Quit? You can't quit," Puck said. "Who will I get to replace you?" Go find a toilet, Elle. What do I care?" The leprechaun shouted as he stamped down the hall and between the legs. That seems to be the end of this video. I'll send more later. Actually, I think this is going to be the last one for tonight. Anyways, goodbye.